Church of Thomas. Genetically Engineered, 5-6-11. Recently, there's been a lot of controversy about the idea of genetically engineered food. Most of the time, it is meant to make the product easier to grow without more pesticides. It is meant to create products in it that are better for us or enhance it in some way so that it will give us more nourishment. There are a lot of controversies about it in that it's not natural, it's not God's way, it could be poisonous, and there are some valid concerns here. If you put the gene for a poison inside of a plant, then you have to wonder if it's going to wind up showing up later in the end product that the humans are going to eat, or animals that we then eat. Now, the problem is with this thinking is there are limitations to what is good and what is bad. The good part is that there are a couple of examples I have of things that are actually good. One of them is potatoes that have been spliced with an amaranth gene. Now, the good part about this is there are huge numbers of people. 60% of the world uses potatoes as a protein source. Now, if you can increase the protein content, then a lot of the protein deficiencies in the world can be alleviated. Now, the only problem is if the company patents it in such a way that it is a kill gene that won't allow it to be, a little bit of the crop saved back and used as seed crop, then it's wrong. Because then, basically, you are creating a situation where people have to come to you every year and pay money you may not have to get the potato that you need to survive on. On the other side, because it is an increased protein content, it can alleviate much of the hunger in the world that uses potato. It is a good thing. Then we have salmon with an extra growth hormone. Now, everybody went up in arms about this. Now, there are problems with it, but the idea that it grows faster, everybody said, oh, well, it's a Franken gene. No, actually, it's the gene that's been transplanted from another kind of salmon. So it's still in the food group, the very same food group as it's being transplanted into. The downside of both of these ideas is that even though they can create better products, faster production, you have to look at the overall cost of why are these things needed. If the salmon is being grown to grow faster, they're also going to produce more waste. They're penned up, which means that they'll need more antibiotics. Of course, if they grow faster, there's a shorter period of time. Having products that can escape into the wild is another issue that's been brought up. And the idea behind that is that something that we have created in our idea for the search of a better product can escape and then breed with the wild population, maybe destroying the wild population. Now, I'm not so sure about that. It would dilute the genetic material, but in the long run, the ones that fared best in the wild would be the ones that survived. Aquaculture in and of itself can be problematic if the wastewater and the large concentration of animals in a small area produces parasites or pollution that can then poison the wild population. But that's a whole nother issue. That's not a genetic modification issue. As far as crops that are dead ends, where you have to buy the seed every year, I think that the advantages of having something you don't have to use a lot of pesticides on are far outweighed by the idea that you have to pay every single year. That's not the way farmers have always done things. Now, let's look at the overall idea of things being mixed. In Levitical literature, they did not want you to plant two kinds of grain in the same field or put two different kinds of animal in the same pasture. This was meant to keep each strain pure. I don't think it holds any credence because most of these species wouldn't have interbred in the first place. On the other side, as a farmer, I know that many of the advances that have come about from developing wild grain or animal products into the products we use today has taken thousands of years, and we did it by breeding the animals. We changed the way that they interacted with us and the food we gave them by selecting for the ones that did the best for us. We were modifying them thousands of years ago. The difference between what we were doing then and doing now is now ethical concerns are being brought in. Is it a dead-end crop that you have to buy every year? Is it something that might be crossed with a non-food plant or animal that might be dangerous? If it is a cross between two totally different species, I can see the problem. As with the salmon, I don't see a problem because they're both salmon. As with the grain, I can see a possibility of allergic reactions. The amaranth is a relative of pigweed, which is one of the primary allergens that I face. However, in a crop form, it may not have enough allergic possibilities for me to downplay whether it would be a good thing for me to eat. But when you cross two different species, I think there needs to be labeling that calls for what is in there, but I don't think that they should be banned outright. Many of the countries in Europe have banned genetically modified materials because of fear. The best way to deal with fear is education. If something is not meant to increase the amount of pesticides in your food, if it's meant to cut down on it, and it's something that is sustainable with the farmer, I'm all for it. If it's something that alleviates protein hunger in areas that eat a large number of potatoes but have very few other protein sources, I think it's wonderful. They have other kinds of grain that they've been producing, including rice, that also has increased the amount of protein that is in the grain. As long as these things are provided to populations in a way that they can be used year after year, I agree with it. Then patent it, fine. But don't put a kill gene in it, because then you're creating a monopoly where people who need your product will have to come to you. This is where the ethical concerns of the science hit home with me. I know that as a farmer, I have picked the best of my crop to hold back and use for the next crop the next year. If I can't do this, then not only am I paying out for feed and pesticides and all these other products, I'm also having to pay over and over again for the very germ material, the very essence of what I'm growing. So if these companies want to produce genetically modified things, several things have to happen. Number one, educate. Number two, labeling. If it's across species lines or if it is a possible allergen, it needs to be listed. That way people can make an educated decision. Number two, keep those kill genes out of there. If it's a good product, there's always going to be a market for us to come and buy more of your product. If you create something that cannot be sustainable in a third world culture where they don't have the money to buy new seeds, you're going to starve people to death. Ethics combined with science is a good thing. It's the only way to do science. God bless the whole world, no exceptions. Angel Eliza.